Let us have a detailed look at the pterygoid processes of the sphenoid bone. The pterygoid process of the sphenoid, from ptery means a wing, on either side descend perpendicularly from the regions where the body and the greater wing of the sphenoid bone unite. Where the body and the greater wing of the sphenoid bone unite, the pterygoid processes of the sphenoid on either side descend perpendicularly. Each process, this pterygoid process, consists of a medial plate and a lateral plate. The latter which serves the origin of the medial and lateral pterygoid muscles. The medial pterygoid, along with the masseter, allows the jaw to move in a vertical direction as it contracts and relaxes. The lateral pterygoid allows the jaw to move in a horizontal direction during mastication. Fracture of either plate are used in clinical medicine to distinguish the Lee-Ford fracture classification for high impact injuries to the sphenoid and maxillary bones. The superior portion of the pterygoid process are fused anteriorly. A vertical groove, the pterygopalatine fossa, descends on the front of the line of fusion. The plates are separated below by an angular cleft, the pterygoid notch, the margins of which are rough for articulation with the pyramidal process of the palatine bone. The two plates diverge behind and enclose between them a V-shaped fossa, the pterygoid fossa, and which contains the medial pterygoid muscle and the tensor veli palatini. Above the pterygoid fossa is a small oval shallow depression, the scaphoid fossa, which gives origin to the tensor veli palatini. The anterior surface of the pterygoid process is broad and triangular near its root, where it forms the posterior wall of the pterygopalatine fossa and presents the anterior orifice of the pterygoid canal. In many mammals, it remains as a separate bone called the pterygoid bone. Its name is Greek for resembling a fin or a wing from its shape, the pterygoid process of the sphenoid. The medial pterygoid plate, medial pterygoid laminae of the sphenoid bone is a horseshoe shaped process that arises from its underside, the medial pterygoid plate. It's narrower and longer. The medial pterygoid plate is narrower and longer than the lateral pterygoid and curves lateralward at its lower extremity into a hook-like process, and that hook-like process is called the pterygoid hamulus, around which the tendon of the tensor veli palatini glides. The lateral surface of this plate forms part of the pterygoid fossa. The medial surface constitutes the lateral boundary of the choanae. That's the choanae, and that constitutes the boundaries of the choanae, or the posterior aperture of the corresponding nasal cavity. Superiorly, the medial plate is prolonged onto the under surface of the body of the sphenoid, that is called, which articulates in front with the sphenoidal process of the palatine and behind this with the ala of the vomer. And this superiorly, this small little prolongation is called the vaginal process. Again, superiorly, the medial plate is prolonged onto the under surface of the body as a thin laminae, and that is called the vaginal process, the small little prolongation. The angular prominence between the posterior margin of the vaginal process and the medial border of the scaphoid fossa is named the pterygoid tubercle. Immediately above this is the posterior opening of the pterygoid canal. On the undersurface of the vaginal process, is a furrow which is converted into a canal by the sphenoidal process of the palatine bone for the transmission of the pharyngeal branch of the internal maxillary artery and the pharyngeal nerve from the sphenopalatine ganglion. Now, the pterygoid tubercle. The pterygoid tubercle is a small prominence situated just inferior to the posterior opening of the Vidian canal, the pterygoid tubercle. The medial pterygoid plate continues superiorly as the lacerum process, which forms the posteromedial aspect of the foramen lacerum, and continues anteriorly as the vaginal process. Let us have a look at the endoscopic view of the pterygoid process. That is the foramen ovale, that is the foramen lacerum, the greater wing of sphenoid, that is the lacerum process, the mandibular strut, medial pterygoid plate, petrosphenoidal fissure, petrosapex, pterygoid fossa, pterygoid tubercle, pterygosphenoidal fissure, scaphoid fossa, the sphenoid sinus floor. That is the medial pterygoid and the lateral pterygoid plate. This is the pterygoid fissure. That is the pterygoid fossa. That is the medial pterygoid plate. That is the lateral pterygoid plate. This is the pterygoid hamulus. That is the vaginal process of the sphenoid bone. The vaginal process of the sphenoid bone. That is the sphenoid rostrum. That is the medial pterygoid. A comprehensive overview of the pterygoid process of the sphenoid.